The crystal cities of Zealand burned like dying stars against the purple sky. Admiral Vexitheta watched from the bridge of his flagship as the beautiful spires melted into glowing rivers. The Zelani had built their homes from living crystal that sang in harmony with their thoughts. Now those songs had become screams of agony that echoed through space. "Harvest complete, Admiral," reported his second-in-command Korval. The younger Kitharan's forearms worked the biocontrols of their ship with practiced ease. Green liquid pulsed through veins in the walls around them. Their vessel was alive, hungry, and growing stronger with each world they consumed. Vextheta's black eyes reflected the dying planet below. His race had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived. They had learned to take what they needed from others. It was the way of things. The weak existed to feed the strong. "How many?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would please him. 12 billion Zelani processed. Their life energy will power our fleet for 6 months. The bioships are already growing new weapons from their genetic material. The Kitharan fleet stretched across the star system like a disease. 50 massive ships, each one a living creature bred for war. They had no engines as other races understood them. Instead, they moved by bending space around themselves, swimming through the void like predators through dark water. Each ship was unique, grown from the genetic material of conquered species. Some had the armored hides of the warrior Thrakani. Others bore the energy manipulation organs of the Voltari. The Kitharans took the best traits from every race they destroyed and made those traits their own. "Send word to the other fleets," Vexitheta commanded. "The Zealand sector is complete. We move to the next spiral arm." The Devourer of Suns turned away from the dying world. Behind them, automated harvesters continued their work. They would strip every useful atom from the planet before following the main fleet. Nothing would be wasted. Nothing would remain. This had been the pattern for over 200 years. The Kitharans would arrive at a star system, demand surrender, and then harvest everything whether the inhabitants agreed or not. Surrender just meant a quicker death. Resistance meant being kept alive longer to power their bioweapons. They had faced every kind of enemy the galaxy could offer. The militant Koreks with their planet-killing weapons, the hive mind Vashi with their trillion-strong swarms, the energy beings of the astral collective who could become pure light. All had fallen. All had become fuel for the Kitharan war machine. "Admiral," Korval's voice carried a note of curiosity, "we are receiving a transmission. It appears to be from the Galactic Coalition." Vexitheta's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Coalition was the latest attempt by the surviving races to band together, as if cooperation could save them when individual strength had failed. "Let me hear their pathetic words." The message crackled through their biospeakers, translated into Kitharan by their ship's living computers. The voice belonged to someone calling herself Chancellor Zendai of the Coalition, Emergency Council. "To any who receive this message, we are broadcasting on all frequencies and in all known languages. The Kitharan Armada has consumed 17 star systems in the past month. They are moving toward the galactic core where billions more innocent beings wait to die. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. We have lost every battle. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us. We are sending this message to all unexplored sectors, including the region known as human space. If humanity still exists somewhere in the dark, we beg you to remember that we once stood together against the darkness. The galaxy is dying. Save us." Silence filled the bridge when the message ended. Then Korval began to laugh. His laughter was picked up by other crew members until the entire bridge buzzed with their amusement. "Humans?" Korval gasped between laughs. "They're calling for help from the humans." Even Vextheta allowed himself a moment of humor. "I had forgotten those creatures still existed in the Coalition's mythology. What was the story? They vanished 300 years ago during some internal war?" "The Silence Wars, Admiral. Their entire sector went dark. No communications, no trade, no exploration ships. Most xenobiologists assume they destroyed themselves. It would be typical of such a violent, chaotic species." Vexitheta remembered the old intelligence reports about humans. They had been unremarkable in almost every way. Average technology, average lifespans, average physical abilities. Their only notable trait had been their tendency toward internal conflict. Wars among themselves were constant, over resources, beliefs, territories, sometimes for no reason at all that other species could understand. The galaxy had barely noticed when human space went silent. There were more important civilizations to trade with, more advanced species to learn from. Humans were just another failed race that had destroyed itself before reaching its potential. Set course for the Andrion cluster, Vexitheta ordered. The Coalition emergency fleet is gathering there. We will end this war before it truly begins. What about the human sector, Admiral? Should we investigate? Vexitheta turned back to watch the last of Zealand disappear behind them. Why waste time on ghosts and empty worlds? If any humans survive their own stupidity, they are welcome to hide in whatever holes they have dug for themselves. Let them watch from the shadows as we reshape their galaxy. The fleet moved as one organism, bioships pulsing with stolen life energy. They left behind them a trail of harvested worlds and broken civilizations. Ahead lay the Andrion cluster, where the surviving species of the galaxy had gathered for one final desperate battle. Vexitheta felt no doubt about the outcome. The Kitharans had evolved beyond such weaknesses as doubt or fear. They were perfect predators in a galaxy full of prey. They would consume the Coalition forces just as they had consumed everything else. Then they would continue their expansion until every star system flew under Kitharan control. The universe belonged to the strong. The Kitharans were the strongest. Therefore, the universe belonged to them. It was simple logic that even the primitive humans could have understood if any of them still existed to understand anything. But they were gone. Vanished into history like so many other failed experiments in evolution. The galaxy was better off without them. As the Kitharan fleet jumped to hyperspace, none of them noticed the tiny probe that detached itself from their flagship. It was smaller than a grain of sand, and completely invisible to their biosensors. The probe watched them go, recorded their destination, and then transmitted its data to a receiver hidden in the shadow of a nearby asteroid. Deep in the darkness between stars, something received that transmission and began to move. The humans were not gone. They had been waiting, watching, and preparing. And now, finally, it was time to remind the galaxy why Earth's children had once been feared among the stars. The hunt was about to begin. The edge of human space looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Captain Zektar commanded the Kitharan advance fleet as they approached the dead zone. 50 bioships spread out in hunting formation, their living hulls tasting the void for any sign of prey. Sensors show nothing, Captain, reported his navigation specialist. No energy signatures, no active technology, no signs of life. The entire region appears sterile. Zektar studied the holographic display floating above his command platform. Star after star showed the same readings. Dead worlds orbiting dying suns, asteroid fields where planets should have been, space stations torn apart and scattered across light years of empty void. What could have done this? Asked his weapons coordinator, a young Kitharan named Velk. The destruction is total. Even we leave more behind when we harvest a system. The captain's 4 eyes focused on the readings. The humans had supposedly been a single-species civilization when they vanished. No conquered alien slaves, no absorbed technologies from other worlds. Just humans, fighting among themselves until there was nothing left to fight over. Internal warfare, Zektar concluded. They turned their weapons on each other and their own worlds. A species that destroys itself is the most dangerous kind of prey, but also the most foolish. The fleet moved deeper into the dead zone. Each system told the same story of devastation. Planets cracked open like eggs. Moons knocked out of orbit. Even the space dust seemed wrong somehow, as if it had been changed at the molecular level. Captain, the sensor operator's voice carried alarm. I'm reading debris fields ahead that don't match our star charts. Large metallic objects, artificial, construction. The main screen showed twisted metal shapes drifting in the void. They were huge, larger than most space stations, but broken into pieces. Strange symbols covered their hulls, letters from a language the Kitharan computers couldn't translate. Human warships, Zektar realized. Or what's left of them. The bioships moved carefully through the wreckage. Some pieces were large enough to have held thousands of crew members. Others were so damaged that only fragments remained. But there were so many pieces. The debris field stretched for millions of kilometers in all directions. Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy residue in the metal, reported the science officer. Whatever destroyed these ships used technology we don't recognize. The damage patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Velk manipulated the biocontrols to get closer readings. The metal itself is strange. It's some kind of alloy we've never seen before. Very light but incredibly strong. If the humans could build ships like this, why did they lose their civil war? Zektar didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about something that bothered him. The fleet had been moving through human space for 6 hours. Normally, bioships this deep in enemy territory would have encountered automated defenses, patrol vessels, or at least surveillance probes. But there was nothing. Complete silence. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "I'm receiving a distress signal. It's very faint and appears to be quite old." "Put it through." Static filled the bridge, then cleared to reveal a human voice speaking their primitive language. The ship's computers translated in real time. "This is Admiral Chen aboard the UNSC Infinity. All human vessels are ordered to retreat to the inner colonies. The enemy has broken through our outer defenses. Repeat. Fall back to defensive positions around Earth and Mars. We will make our stand there. Chen out." The message ended. Zektar felt a strange chill run through his exoskeleton. The message had been broadcast 300 years ago during the final phase of the Silence Wars. "Sir," the sensor operator said, his voice uncertain. "I'm getting some strange readings from the outer edge of our formation. Ships 7 and 12 aren't responding to communication attempts." Zektar's attention snapped back to the present. "What do you mean not responding?" "They're not answering our calls, sir, but their biosignatures are still active. Life support is functioning, engines are running, but no one is answering." The captain opened a direct neural link to Ship 7. Every Kitharan vessel was partially connected to its commander's consciousness. He should have been able to sense the crew's thoughts and emotions across space. Nothing. The ship was there, alive and functioning but empty of Kitharan minds. "All ships maintain close formation," Zektar ordered. "Something is wrong here." But it was too late. Even as he gave the command, more ships began going silent. Not destroyed, not damaged, just silent. They continued flying in formation like ghost ships piloted by the dead. "Sir, I'm detecting movement in the asteroid field to our port side," the navigation officer reported. "Something large is moving through the rocks." Zektar stared at the display. The asteroids were shifting position, but there was nothing on sensors large enough to move them, unless whatever was out there was invisible to their biotechnology. "All weapons online," he commanded. "Battle formation Alpha. Whatever's out there will destroy it." The remaining ships began to spread out into attack positions, their living weapons charged with energy, preparing to fire. But they never got the chance. Ship 15 simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. No explosion, no energy discharge, no debris. It just stopped existing on their sensors. Then Ship 23 disappeared. Then Ship 31. "Captain!" Velk's voice cracked with fear. "What are we fighting?" "I can't see anything." Zektar had commanded bioships for 40 years. He had faced every known form of alien technology, but this was beyond his experience. Ships don't just vanish without a trace. Energy can't be destroyed without leaving some signature. Yet his fleet was being picked apart by an enemy he couldn't detect. "All ships emergency jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "Retreat to the outer beacon and call for reinforcement." But as the bioships began powering up their jump drives, something impossible happened. A ship appeared directly in front of them, dropping out of some form of stealth that made it completely invisible until that moment. It was like nothing the Kitharans had ever seen. Where their bioships were organic curves and flowing lines, this vessel was all angles and sharp edges. It was black as the void between stars, and covered in weapons that didn't match any known design. Most shocking of all, it was huge. Larger than 3 Kitharan bioships combined. Its hull bore symbols in that same untranslatable human language. "Sir," the communications officer whispered, "I'm receiving a transmission from that ship. It's broadcasting in perfect Kitharan." The voice that came through their speakers was calm, cold, and utterly without fear. "Kitharan vessels, you have entered restricted space without authorization. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." Zektar stared at the massive ship in shock. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The humans were supposed to be extinct, dead for 3 centuries. There was no way they could have built something like this. But there it was, hanging in space like a dark angel of death. And, somehow, Zektar knew with absolute certainty that the voice meant every word of its warning. The humans had returned, and they were no longer the weak, primitive species the galaxy remembered. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNSC Retribution and watched the Kitharan fleet through eyes that were no longer entirely human. 3 centuries of evolution had changed her species in ways the galaxy couldn't imagine. Her left eye was artificial, connected directly to the ship's computer systems. Her right arm was cybernetic, capable of interfacing with any technology on the vessel, but her mind, enhanced by neural implants and quantum processors, remained utterly human in its capacity for both mercy and wrath. "Analysis complete, Captain," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Torres. Like all humans aboard the ship, he was more than human now. His consciousness existed partially in the ship's computer network, allowing him to process battlefield information at superhuman speeds. 50 bioships, typical Catharan design. They've absorbed genetic material from at least 12 different species. Sarah nodded grimly. The reports from their surveillance probes had prepared her for this moment. The Catharans represented everything humanity had learned to despise during their long isolation. They were conquerors, who saw other species as nothing more than resources, to be consumed. "Status of the missing ships?" she asked. "All crews are secure aboard our stealth vessels," reported Chief Watson from the security station. "Extraction teams used neural dampeners to render them unconscious before transport. No casualties on either side." The 30-second warning she had given the Catharans was ticking down. Through her neural link to the ship's sensors, Sarah could feel the alien vessels powering up their weapons. Their biotechnology was impressive in its own way, but it was still based on principles the Catharans had stolen from other species. They had never developed anything truly original. Humans, on the other hand, had spent 300 years doing nothing but developing new ways to fight and survive. "Captain," the communications officer announced, "the lead Catharan vessel is responding. They're rejecting our surrender demand." Captain Zektar's image appeared on the main screen. His 4 black eyes blazed with fury and contempt. When he spoke, the ship's computers translated his words instantly. "Unknown vessel, you will identify yourself immediately. This fleet serves the Catharan Empire, masters of this galaxy. You will surrender your ship and prepare to be harvested, or we will take what we need from your wreckage." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Command. We are humanity, and you have made a terrible mistake coming here." The Catharan's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Humanity? The extinct barbarians who destroyed themselves centuries ago? Impossible. Even if some of you survived, you were a primitive species. Your technology was centuries behind the great powers of the galaxy. Sarah agreed. That was then. This is now. The 30 seconds expired. Without any visible signal from Sarah, the Retribution opened fire. But these weren't the crude missiles and energy weapons the Catharans expected from human technology. These were quantum disruptor beams, weapons that attacked matter at the subatomic level. The energy beam struck the closest Catharan bioship and simply erased it from existence. No explosion, no debris, no flash of light. One moment there was a living warship. The next there was empty space where it had been. The remaining Catharan ships responded with everything they had. Bioplasma cannons fired streams of living energy. Acid pods launched clouds of ship-eating organisms. Neural disruptors tried to scramble the human crew's thoughts. Nothing touched the Retribution. Her shields weren't energy barriers like other species used. They were space-time distortion fields that bent reality around the ship. The Catharan weapons simply passed through altered space and struck nothing. "Interesting," Sarah observed as her tactical display updated. "Their bioweapons are adapting faster than our models predicted. Increase firepower to level 2. 2 more quantum beams lanced out from the human dreadnought. 2 more Catharan ships ceased to exist. The rest of the fleet began to retreat, but it was too late. Space around them began to change. What had appeared to be empty voids suddenly filled with human ships. They came from everywhere at once, dropping out of stealth, emerging from interdimensional hiding places, materializing from inside asteroid fields where they had been waiting, in perfect silence. The Catharans found themselves surrounded by a fleet of vessels unlike anything they had ever seen. Each human ship was a work of art and death combined. Sleek lines that seemed to cut through space itself. Weapons that hummed, with barely contained power. Hulls made from materials that their sensors couldn't properly identify. "Impossible," Captain Zektar whispered, his voice carrying across the communication channel. "Where did they all come from?" "We've been here the whole time," Sarah replied, "watching you, learning about you, preparing for this moment." The human fleet didn't attack immediately. Instead, they demonstrated their complete control of the battlefield. Gravity wells appeared around the Catharan ships, holding them in place. Time dilation fields slowed some vessels to a crawl. Others found their biohulls infected with nanomachines that began turning their own ships against them. It wasn't a battle. It was a science demonstration with the Kitharans as unwilling test subjects. "Your biotechnology is impressive," Sarah continued, her voice calm and conversational. "But you've made one critical error in your evolution. You only take from others. You never create anything new. We, on the other hand, spent 300 years doing nothing but creating." A Kitharan bioship tried to ram the Retribution in a desperate suicide attack. The human vessel didn't even move. The bioship struck the distortion field around the dreadnought and was gently redirected into empty space, its momentum completely absorbed by manipulated physics. "You see, Captain Zektar, when humanity disappeared from the galaxy, it wasn't because we destroyed ourselves. It was because we realized something important. The galaxy is full of species like yours. Conquerors, destroyers, those who see other life as nothing more than fuel for their ambitions." The quantum disruptors fired again, but this time they didn't destroy the target ships. Instead, they surgically removed the Kitharan weapon systems, leaving the vessels intact but helpless. "So we decided to become something better. Something strong enough to protect the innocent from predators like you. We evolved, Captain. Not just our bodies or our technology, but our purpose. We became the guardians this galaxy has needed for so long." The demonstration was over. Of the 50 Kitharan bioships that had entered human space, 37 remained intact but completely disabled. The rest had been cleanly destroyed when they refused to surrender. "You will be escorted to rehabilitation facilities," Sarah announced to the surviving Kitharan crews. "Your ships will be studied, your biological adaptations will be catalogued, and you will be taught a new way to exist in this galaxy." Captain Zektar's image flickered on the screen one last time. His 4 eyes no longer showed fury or contempt. They showed something his species had forgotten how to feel. Fear. "What are you?" he whispered. Sarah's enhanced eyes met his across the void. "We are what you made necessary. We are humanity evolved, and we are no longer hiding in the dark." Admiral Vexitheta received Captain Zektar's distress signal while his main fleet was preparing to crush the Coalition forces at Andrion Prime. The transmission cut off mid-sentence, leaving only static and the impossible message that humans had returned from extinction. "Analysis of the transmission, Commander Korval?" Vexitheta demanded. His second-in-command worked frantically at the biocontrols. "The signal originated from the edge of human space, Admiral, but there's something wrong with the data. Our computers are having difficulty processing it." "Explain." "The quantum signatures don't match anything in our databases. The energy readings suggest technology far beyond what humans possessed 3 centuries ago, but that's impossible. No species can advance that far in such a short time." Vextheta's mandibles clicked in thought. 300 years was barely a moment in galactic terms. Even the most advanced civilizations took millennia to develop new technologies. The idea that primitive humans could have evolved beyond Kitharan science was absurd. "Send the 2nd and 3rd battle groups to investigate," he ordered. 200 bioships should be more than enough to deal with whatever destroyed Zektar's scouts. The massive Kitharan fleet split into 2 forces. Vexitheta would continue toward Andrion Prime with 300 ships to finish the coalition. The investigation force would sweep human space clean of whatever had emerged from the ruins. But as the 2nd battle group approached the dead zone, they found something waiting for them. Not hiding, not skulking in the shadows. Waiting in open space, as if they had nothing to fear from 200 Kitharan warships. A single human vessel hung motionless against the stars. It was even larger than the ship that had destroyed Zektar's fleet, if that was possible. Its hull was midnight black and covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move when looked at directly. The ship radiated power like a barely contained star. "This is Admiral Torres of the UNSC Inevitable," came the transmission in perfect Kitharan. "You are trespassing in human territory. Leave now or face the consequences." Group Commander Hestai laughed at the audacity. 1 ship against 200? These humans have learned nothing from their previous defeat. He ordered the attack without further discussion. The bio-fleet spread out in standard formation and opened fire with everything they possessed. Bioplasma, acid clouds, neural disruptors, gravity weapons stolen from a dozen conquered species. The combined firepower could have cracked a small moon. None of it reached the human ship. The Inevitable didn't have shields in any conventional sense. Instead, it existed in a state of controlled dimensional flux. The Kitharan weapons passed, Through layers of folded spacetime, their energy dissipated across multiple realities. It was as if the ship existed and didn't exist at the same moment. Admiral Torres's response was devastating in its precision. The inevitable fired not at the bioships, but at the space around them. Reality twisted and compressed, creating localized, gravitational anomalies that crushed 30 vessels in an instant. But that was only the beginning. Space itself began to come alive around the Kitharan fleet. What they had taken for empty voids suddenly revealed itself to be filled with human vessels. They emerged from interdimensional pockets, from stealth fields that bent light and sensor waves, from hiding places inside the quantum foam that existed between atoms. The humans had turned the entire system into a trap. Every asteroid, every gas cloud, every piece of space debris concealed weapons and sensors. The Kitharans found themselves fighting not just ships, but the fabric of space itself. Impossible, HFY screamed as his formation crumbled around him. No species has this kind of technology. Most species don't spend 3 centuries preparing for one specific type of war. Admiral Torres replied calmly. We've had a long time to think about how to fight biological ships, Commander. Would you like a demonstration? The human fleet didn't just attack the Kitharan bioships, they infected them. Nanoscopic machines invaded the living hulls and began rewriting their genetic code in real time. Bioships that had been loyal servants of the Kitharan Empire suddenly turned on their masters, their living nervous systems converted to serve human purposes. But the true horror came when the humans demonstrated their mastery of time itself. Sections of the Kitharan fleet began moving in slow motion as localized time dilation fields took effect. Other ships found themselves accelerated to dangerous speeds, their biohulls unable to handle the temporal stress. Group Commander HFY watched his mighty fleet reduced to scattered wreckage in less than 4 hours. When the battle ended, only 12 of his 200 ships remained intact, and those only because the humans had chosen to spare them. Your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war, Admiral Torres announced. Your ships will be studied and then recycled into useful materials. As for you, Commander, you have a message to deliver. The surviving Kitharan vessels were released and allowed to flee back to Admiral Vexetheta's position. HFY arrived to find the main fleet in chaos, torn between continuing the attack on the Coalition and responding to this impossible new threat. Report, Vexetheta demanded as soon as the commander's ship docked with the flagship. HFY's 4 eyes were wild with terror and confusion. Admiral, the humans, they're not the same species we remember. They're something else now, something evolved. Evolved how? They've integrated with their technology at the cellular level. Their ships don't just carry weapons. They are weapons. They can manipulate space and time like we manipulate biomatter. And their tactics, Admiral, they predicted every move we made before we made it. Vexetheta felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The Kitharans had conquered the galaxy through superior biological adaptation and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that could outthink them. Numbers, Commander. How many ships did they have? I don't know, HFY admitted. They appeared and disappeared at will. Our sensors couldn't track them properly. It could have been 50 ships or 500. We never saw their full strength. Before Vexetheta could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human woman in a uniform unlike anything the Kitharans had seen before. Her left eye glowed with artificial light, and strange symbols moved across her skin like living tattoos. I am Fleet Admiral Chen of the United Nations Space Command, she said. You are Admiral Vexetheta, leader of the Kitharan invasion force. We need to talk. Vexetheta drew himself up to his full height. Surrender now, human, and I will make your death quick. Admiral Chen smiled, and that smile contained more threat than any Kitharan battle cry. Admiral, you seem to be under the impression that you're still in command of this situation. Let me correct that misunderstanding. The space around the Kitharan fleet suddenly filled with human vessels, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They appeared from every direction at once, a wall of black metal and barely contained destruction that surrounded the entire Kitharan armada. 300 years ago you would have been right, Admiral Chen continued. Humanity was weak, divided, primitive. But you see, Admiral, adversity is the greatest teacher in the universe, and you and species like you have been excellent teachers. Vexetheta stared in shock at the display showing the human fleet. Each ship was larger and more advanced than his own flagship. The combined firepower surrounding his force could have sterilized entire star systems. We learned from every species you destroyed, Chen said. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We've been preparing for this moment since the day we went into hiding. The question now, Admiral, is simple. Do you surrender? Or do we demonstrate what 3 centuries of human evolution looks like when applied to warfare? For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vexitheta understood what prey felt like when faced with a superior predator. The roles had reversed, completely. The hunters had become the hunted, and the humans were very, very good at hunting. The battle that wasn't a battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Vexitheta had commanded the Catharan war machine for over 40 years. He had broken entire civilizations, harvested thousands of worlds, and never once doubted his species' superiority. But as he watched his mighty armada neutralized by weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics, he finally understood what the prey species had felt in their final moments. Helplessness. The human fleet didn't simply attack. They dissected the Catharan formation with surgical precision. Bioships found their living hulls invaded by nanomachines that converted their organic weapons into harmless proteins. Others discovered their navigation systems hijacked, their own vessels turning against them with perfect coordination. Admiral Chen's flagship, the UNSC Transcendent, moved through the battle like a dancer through music. It wasn't just a ship anymore, Vexitheta realized. It was an extension of the human admiral's will, responding to her thoughts as if it were part of her body. Fascinating, Chen's voice came through the communication channel as Catharan ships fell silent around them. Your biotechnology is more advanced than our initial projections suggested. The integration between ship and crew is remarkably sophisticated. We'll learn a great deal from studying it. You cannot defeat us all, Vexitheta snarled, though even he could hear the desperation in his own voice. There are thousands of Catharan fleets across the galaxy. We know, Admiral Chen replied calmly. We've been tracking them for decades. Every ship, every base, every breeding facility. Did you really think we would reveal ourselves before we were ready to deal with your entire species? Through the viewport of his flagship, Vexitheta watched human vessels perform maneuvers that defied everything he understood about space combat. They moved in perfect formation, their actions coordinated by quantum communication systems that operated faster than light. But more disturbing was the way they fought. There was no anger, no passion, no desire for revenge. Just cold, calculated precision. Your species has a choice to make, Admiral, Chen continued. Surrender unconditionally and accept rehabilitation, or face complete extinction. We prefer the first option, but we are prepared for either outcome. The words hit Vexitheta like a physical blow. No species in galactic history had ever threatened the Catharans with extinction. They were the apex predators, the unstoppable force that consumed everything in their path. What are you? He whispered. Admiral Chen's image appeared on his main screen. Her cybernetic enhancements were clearly visible now, but beneath them Vexitheta could see something that terrified him more than any weapon. Compassion. The humans weren't destroying his fleet out of hatred or revenge. They were doing it because they believed it was necessary. We are what we chose to become, she said simply. When we realized the galaxy was full of species like yours, we had 2 options. We could hide and hope you would never find us, or we could evolve into something capable of stopping you. We chose evolution. The battle ended with the systematic capture of every Catharan vessel, not destroyed, not scattered, but captured intact with their crews unharmed. It was the most complete military defeat in recorded galactic history, accomplished, with minimal loss of life. But Admiral Chen wasn't finished. As the last Catharan ship powered down its weapons, she opened a communication channel to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The message broadcast simultaneously in thousands of languages, reaching every species from the core worlds to the outer rim. Her image appeared on screens across 100 billion worlds. The cybernetic admiral looked directly into the camera, and when she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute authority. Citizens of the galaxy, I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Command. We are humanity, and we have returned. On Andrion Prime, the Coalition Emergency Council stared in stunned silence as their desperate plea for help was answered by the very species they had assumed was extinct. 300 years ago, we withdrew from galactic civilization. Not because we were weak, not because we feared other species, but because we recognized a fundamental truth. The galaxy operates on a simple principle: the strong prey upon the weak. Civilizations rise and fall based on their ability to defend themselves against those who would consume them. Across the galaxy, species that had cowered before Kitharin, fleets watched in amazement as human ships emerged from the darkness between stars. They had been there all along, watching, waiting, preparing. We chose to become strong, not for conquest, not for expansion, but for protection. We have spent 3 centuries evolving beyond our original limitations. We have integrated with our technology, enhanced our biology, and expanded our consciousness. We have become the guardians this galaxy has needed. The images that accompanied her words showed the true extent of human evolution. Cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ships that could manipulate space and time. Humans who had transcended their biological origins while retaining their essential humanity. The Kitharin Empire, which has terrorized this galaxy for over 2 centuries, has been neutralized. Their fleets are captured, their leaders are in custody, and their victims will be avenged. But we did not do this for revenge. We did it because no species should have to live in fear of predators like them. Admiral Vex Theta, now a prisoner aboard a human vessel, watched the broadcast from his detention cell. His captors had been courteous, even kind, but absolutely firm. He would be studied, questioned, and eventually rehabilitated. The Kitharin Empire was finished, not through genocide, but through transformation. To those species who have suffered under Kitharin rule, know that your ordeal is over. We will help you rebuild your worlds and restore your civilizations. To those who collaborated with the Kitharins out of fear, you will be forgiven and welcomed back into galactic society. To those who collaborated willingly, Admiral Chen's voice hardened slightly. You will face justice, but it will be fair and proportional to your crimes. The message continued with promises of aid, technology sharing, and protection. But it also contained warnings for any who might think to follow the Kitharin example. Let this be understood throughout the galaxy. The age of unopposed conquest is over. We have emerged from the darkness to serve as guardians of the innocent and protectors of the weak. Any species that chooses the path of genocide and destruction will face the same fate as the Kitharins. But perhaps most importantly, the message ended with hope. Humanity has learned much during our isolation. We have developed technologies that could benefit all galactic civilizations. We have discovered new sciences, new philosophies, new ways of existence. We offer to share this knowledge with any species that demonstrates wisdom, compassion, and respect for life. When the broadcast ended, the galaxy was forever changed. The balance of power had shifted completely. Where once there had been chaos and predation, now there was order and protection. In the months that followed, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy. They brought aid to devastated worlds, protection to vulnerable colonies, and hope to species that had forgotten what it felt like to be safe. The Kitharin survivors, to everyone's surprise, began to change. Removed from their violent culture and exposed to human philosophy, many discovered that they could exist without constant conquest. They became students rather than predators, learning new ways to interact with the universe. Admiral Vex Theta himself became an unlikely ambassador between species, using his knowledge of Kitharin tactics to help protect worlds from other threats. His transformation from genocidal commander to guardian of peace became a symbol of what was possible when species chose evolution over extinction, and in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol. They had become what they set out to be, the guardians of galactic civilization. The universe was no longer ruled by the principle that the strong devour the weak. Now it was protected by the principle that the strong defend those who cannot defend themselves. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as saviors. And the galaxy would never be the same.